When it comes to tales about creepy things, any story about dolls will always pique my interest. Heck, originally the powers that be just wanted me to talk about creepy things found on camera today, but I convinced them otherwise, so hopefully the algorithm doesn't let me down with finding like-minded people. Let's just jump into it together. I'm too excited. I think I'm gonna start off today with a doozy of a coincidence that is begging for attention. So a husband and wife team of paranormal investigators claim their Raggedy Ann doll is possessed after CCTV footage showed it moving out of its display cabinet. Lee and Lindsay Steer, aged 37 and 52 respectively, who run the Museum of Haunted Objects from their home in Rotherham, South Yorkshire, said they have caught the doll on, CCTV footage flipping over their Ouija board table in the past. You're telling me that a large Raggedy Ann doll is causing problems with a Ouija board? Well then, I'm getting deja vu. Anybody else? They believe the doll is the cause of them nearly being in a car crash and having mysterious illnesses, which once led Lindsay being in hospital for a week, with doctors having no idea what caused it. So in the museum, Lindsay has also felt something grab her neck tightly and has seen things fly across the room with no logical explanation, which the full-time investigators believe could be because of their doll. Their doll is an identical copy of the cursed Annabelle doll, and they think it might be a conduit for a similar spiritual energy source. The doll was made in, the same factory, and since it looks exactly the same as Annabelle, which many paranormal believers think is possessed, the coincidences are there. Now, this specific doll was given to Lee and Lindsay in October of 2019, and on the 2-year anniversary of the couple owning the doll struck again. This is where the heavy Ouija table was hurled over, which was caught on footage, and Lee explained that the doll was sitting on a chair at the table. It's very solid and it's got a metal leg holding it up, so there's no way it would have just fallen over or collapsed. Somebody had put a little speaker on the table, walked away, and the next minute the table just collapsed. There's no logical explanation as to why that should have happened, and it was just the way this doll was staring straight at it. So after this, they decided to put their Raggedy Ann doll in a glass cupboard on a secure hook to avoid anything dangerous happening again. But they didn't put anything protective around it. No holy water, no tarot cards, no nothing. So on Halloween night, 2022 at about 3 a.m., the footage showed this Raggedy Ann stepping out of the display cabinet legs first. And that's the footage we have today. Lindsay explained she's in a glass cabinet. The door is really stiff, so you'd have to really pull it open. She shouldn't have fallen legs first because, her head's heavier than her legs. It looks as though in the footage that she's sort of twisting her legs to come out first, stepping out, which isn't a natural way for a doll to fall. It's very, very bizarre. Lindsay has continued to explain that they have some cat balls which basically flash if somebody touches them, and all of a sudden they just went flying down the steps, which is just so bizarre. In the last 2 weeks after the Raggedy Ann stepping out of the cupboard, the museum was getting more and more dangerous and things were getting more physical. Now, the paranormal investigators were used to dealing with that sort of thing, but it was getting more intense and it was building up energy, big time. When Lindsay was feeling a reel one day, something once again grabbed to the back of her neck out of nowhere and squeezed it so tightly that it wasn't painful, but it made her not want to be in that room and made her think something major's gonna happen, but apparently she's not scaring them for now. So yeah, the couple are keeping the doll in the museum for now, but they say if things start getting violent, they're gonna consider getting help from a demonologist. Yeah, I'm watching history repeat itself. Anybody else? If things start getting violent, they're already violent. For the love of everything, bring in a demonologist, get rid of the Ouija board, douse the place in holy water. Protect yourselves, you fools. Next up is a little variant on today's list, a demented puppet. Paranormal investigator Jane Harris filmed the puppet every night for 3 months using a timed night vision camera. The 32-year-old from Stourbridge, West Mids was watching the puppet after its previous owner claimed it tried to head necklace him to death. The chilling footage shows the puppet's cross slowly moving upright and then crashing into a glass pane of the sealed box. Since receiving the puppet, it has been kept inside a container blessed by holy water and for extra safety and investigation accuracy, which good! Jane, who investigates haunted dolls for her company, HG Paranormal, said the cabinet has no doors, so you would have to physically lift all 4 sides and the base off to move it. For them, there was no point in faking evidence. It's only tricking yourself. This footage was real. The ultimate goal was to find out as much as they could about the spirit and then to try to understand why it's still there. Jane had been investigating spiritual attachments to haunted puppets for 17 years after training as a psychologist. She mentioned that the video evidence is real and more difficult for her to disprove than people believing they have had paranormal experiences from other haunted dolls. Now, the puppet's former owner, John, inherited the 1960s toy after his father's death and claims to have experienced minor haunting experiences. But they all built up to one evening where he believes the spirit attached to the puppet was, getting the life out of him. He mentioned that he had cleared out all of his dad's belongings apart from the puppet, which he left on the drawer by his bed for some reason, and that night he just couldn't sleep. He was wide awake in bed and thought he saw a shadow move from one side of the window to the other and was worried something was trying to scare him. But then without warning, his throat was very, very tight, and he's never had anybody's hands around his throat before, so it was really scary. scary. And while he was struggling to breathe, he tried to wake his wife, but she wasn't waking up. When she did, he remembered looking straight at the puppet sitting on the drawers near the bed and realizing that was the source of the problem. John said the haunting experience began 2 weeks after inheriting the puppet, which he reluctantly kept because, well, it was one of his father's favorite possessions. He also started to have really bad headaches and feel dizzy, which at first he didn't really think could be because of the puppet. It just, it happened. But once Jane took the doll away, both John and his wife felt a lot better. That night he slept properly for the first time in months. No more headaches, no more footsteps. Everything had stopped, and that's when he realized, damn, it was the puppet. He's mentioned that the fact that there's video evidence now kind of makes him uncomfortable. He's not gonna watch it. He doesn't need any more proof. He lived with that thing for months, and it did more than enough to convince him. That's about says it all. Time to travel over to the UK, where we meet another doll said to be an equivalent to Annabelle. The spooky Grace doll is kept in a locked box in one of the bedrooms at Ye Old King's Head pub in Chester, which is said to be the most haunted hotel in Chester. The pub is renowned for stories of spooky goings-on over the years, with paranormal enthusiasts from all over the world now coming to the city to visit the venue. The box containing the eerie doll is under 24/7 surveillance and chained down, but not to keep the doll in, according to the hotel's paranormal investigator, Danny Moss. He said instead it was to keep people from opening the box. He explained that some visitors had felt compelled to open it, as though something was willing them to do it. The hotel plays host to numerous keen ghost hunters, eager to see the array of creepy artifacts and reported paranormal activity at the venue. The Grace doll is said to be so haunted that only seasoned paranormal investigators can enter the room in which it resides, which is so smart. Danny explained that he's been investigating the item for the last 5 years, and he's seen it produce some of the best evidence in the paranormal field, but to now capture it moving on camera is a special moment. I agree with this. There will always be skepticism when it comes to the paranormal, and rightly so, but when you capture something like this, people have to come to terms with the possibility that there really are things out there that we can't understand. The way the item moves defies all laws of gravity, and that's what makes the footage so compelling. It's important to note that the room is locked and the public do not have access upstairs during the day. Danny said it was moved to room 8 at the hotel, also known as My Haunted Hotel, in January of last year from its previous home at the Tatton Old Hall in Cheshire. The doll made national headlines in 2019 when it was said to have told Danny it wanted to burn his eyes. Absolutely not. No thank you. Time to move on from stuffed nightmares and instead talk about a porcelain beauty. Could not me. Lee Roberts and Paul Stevenson were doing a practice live broadcast from the notorious poltergeist hotspot ahead of their scheduled Halloween visit. However, while filming themselves creep around the infamous 30 East Drive in Pontefract, West Yorkshire, they claim a doll in one of the bedrooms was used by a poltergeist or demonic force to scare them. The terrifying footage shows a porcelain doll named Victoria in her box with the lid on when they first go into the bedroom. Nice and chill, just hanging out. However, when they return moments later, the doll has moved and the lid is completely off and has been bent out of shape, leaving the pair then checking the house for an intruder in panic. They mentioned that there's definitely a dark presence, and sadly, it could be a demonic one. The house was the site of one of Britain's most notorious alleged hauntings when the Pritchard family was subjected to years of torment by the so-called Black Monk of Pontefract. Mr. Roberts believes the Black Monk is a dark spirit, possibly demonic, who used Victoria to scare the ghost hunting duo into not returning on Halloween. The doll was apparently originally found in the attic of the house, but here's the kicker: nobody knows where she came from or who she belonged to. The box actually has a warning on it saying that if you wish to look at Victoria, you should not take her out of the box and always cover her back up. And once again, I say, those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. If something has a warning on it, leave it alone. The footage that we have shows the duo enter the bedroom and film the position that Victoria is lying in, with the lid to the box covering her face. After leaving the room, Mr. Roberts claims that they both saw the shape of a figure move across the hallway with wavy black hair, just like the doll, followed by a loud bang, so they went back into the room to investigate. The footage shows Mr. Stevenson then claim he heard someone call out Lee, so the duo panics and begins rushing downstairs in fear to check the doors are, locked. Mr. Roberts mentioned that they didn't know what was real and what wasn't. If someone had been in there toying with them, then that's even scarier than a ghost. It was a really frightening 90 minutes, and as they left, the door swung open, but wouldn't do it again when they tried. They definitely think it was some sort of presence doing it. They were just about to leave, so they think it was something there warning them to say, don't go back. I hope they listened. So when it comes to who or what is most likely to be perceptive of ghosties in the home, animals, the very young, and true believers tend to bear the brunt of the responsibilities. Well, this is a case where a kitty sadly got caught on camera while experiencing the fright of their lives. Kathy Gallagher said that since moving into her home back in August of 2018, she had experienced a series of scary supernatural incidents, including objects moving on their own and shadow figures appearing in the darkness. But she was stunned when a CCTV camera she had set up in her basement captured a black mass emerging from her mother's old doll from the 1950s, which she believes could be a ghost. Footage captured shows her black cat Salem visibly distressed and staring intently at her dolls before what appears to be a black mist appearing from one of them and drifting in the cat's direction before sending the fearful feline scarpering. Although the call center operator has become used to the paranormal scaring the life out of her in her own home, she has since avoided venturing down down to the basement unaccompanied at all costs. The footage is so freaky that some suggested that the family had digitally edited the clip, but Kathy says that they had to work really hard to debunk anything they capture on camera, and she's adamant, if I put it on the internet, it's real. So after the mom of one discovered her home was a hive for paranormal activity, she started capturing videos, and her daughter convinced her to set up a TikTok account to share them, which I think has amassed more than 600,000 followers and likes. Kathy mentioned that her TikTok followers asked to put the camera in with the dolls overnight in the basement, since that's where most of the activity is. The cat was down there, and also her daughter's bedroom was down there, and she said the cat ran to her door. She heard him outside and let him in, and he was just clearly afraid of something. That's when she told her mom, hey, you might want to check those cameras because the cat's crazy scared. So the next day, they checked the cameras, and what she saw was her cat clearly staring at these dolls, frightened of something, and then all of a sudden, the black mass, which she thinks could be a ghost. She describes Salem, which is the cat, as being her protector. The cat goes everywhere with her, so if she does have to go downstairs and she's nervous, he follows her, and it's uncommon for him to show signs of being afraid like that.
Number 5 on this list is Okiku. Okiku is definitely one of the strangest haunted dolls out there and certainly has a unique curse to it. Curious Archive says, according to the story of Okiku, the doll was purchased by a 17-year-old boy named Eikichi Suzuki during a visit to Sapporo for a marine expedition in 1918. The doll was a gift from his travels for his 2-year-old sister named Okiku. In some versions of the story she's called Kikuko. When she was initially purchased, the doll had a hairstyle called okappa, similar to a bob cut, which is popular on Japanese dolls. Okiku loved her new doll, and it served as the little girl's companion until she died suddenly from a cold-like illness at the age of 3. Devastated by their loss, Okiku's family put her favorite doll on the household altar where they prayed in memory of Okiku. Before long, the family noticed that the hair on Okiku's doll had begun to grow, as if the hair was on the head of a human. The family concluded that the restless spirit of Okiku, who died so young, was now inside her beloved doll. The doll remained with Okiku's family until 1938, when they moved to Iwamizawa in Hokkaido and gave the doll to the Meniji Temple, where she remains enshrined to this day. She is now referred to as Okiku after her former owner. Some believe the hair that continues to grow from her head is the hair of the child, Okiku. The priest who goes and cuts Okiku's hair says that he receives messages from her. These messages appear to him through dreams. They aren't your typical weird dreams, though. They are so detailed and specific that he knows it's the work of the doll. He isn't the only one who receives dreams from this doll either. She sends messages to other people who live in this temple too, however, they aren't nearly as nice. Apparently, some individuals have had her attack them in their dreams. This is very similar to another doll on this list that we'll get to later. Dolls that can target you through your sleep are especially dangerous, as that's when you're most vulnerable. Truly don't know why we keep giving the evil demon haircuts and don't instead just give it a nice little trip to the dump. Number 4 on this list is Robert the doll. Do not take this thing's picture without its permission. If you do, then bad things are going to be coming pretty soon. The Travel Channel says, Robert came to the Otto family of Key West, Florida in the early 1900s as a gift to their youngest son, Robert Eugene Otto. The boy and doll became inseparable, with the child often laying blame for his misdeeds on the doll. The family alleged that the toy often seemed to change positions of its own accord. They also claimed that when their son was alone in his room, they could hear him conversing with the doll, and the doll responding in a completely different voice. After Eugene's death in 1974, Robert was given to the East Martello Museum. Visitors who have taken his picture without permission claim to have experienced terrible misfortune as a result of their transgressions. Robert is surrounded by letters of apology and admiration. These letters of apology are basically last-ditch efforts by people to try and get rid of the curse that befalls them for doing anything that Robert doesn't like. I have no idea if these letters work or not, or if it's case-by-case basis. The only thing that I do know is that most dolls you take a picture of don't require you to later come back to them and beg for forgiveness. The original owner, Robert Eugene Otto, died in 1974, and a lot of people believe that this doll started getting evil after that. It lost its best friend and is now taking its grief out on anyone or anything that comes in contact with it. Best course of action for you? don't come in contact with it. Number 3 on this list is Lily. Now residing at Zach Bagans of Ghost Adventures Haunted Museum, Lily was made during the 1800s in Germany and features real human hair. According to the museum's Facebook post, she was discovered by an antiques dealer who took her home but began having recurring nightmares about a little girl who had a very bad accident. She was subsequently put up for sale at the antique shop. On one occasion, a customer's little girl spoke to the doll for 3 hours, interacting with her like a fellow child. She informed the proprietor that Lily was a little girl that had been subjected to extreme violence. When first encountering the doll, Baggins reported that he felt an immense energy radiating from the figure. So basically, if you keep this doll, then you will get haunted with countless nightmares. I have no idea how this doll managed to survive this long and somebody hasn't just burned this thing hot. Like, don't get me wrong, I feel bad about what went down in the 1800s. Whichever girl's spirit is haunting this doll, whatever happened to her, it sounds horrible and it never should have happened in the first place. But maybe destroying this doll wouldn't even be a bad thing. Maybe she keeps giving people nightmares so that people will finally feel the need to get rid of her. I obviously don't know, but I'm just guessing that being trapped in a doll for over 200 years probably isn't the best experience. Number 2 on this list is the Shadow Doll. I recently spoke about the Shadow Doll in a video looking at demons that Ed and Lorraine Warren were scared of. It needs to be brought up again though, because any demon that's gonna scare those two people is obviously scary enough to get any of us. Scare Street says, the Warrens' files do not state why this horrible doll was created in the first place. However, they do state that it was used in satanic rituals and it was created by black magic using human and animal bones. It's rumored that if a picture were to be taken of the doll, it would project itself into the dreams of the person who dared to look at it in the eye. However, it's not only a simple dream. The dream would be so intensely nightmarish that the victims would either suffer from a heart attack or forever be frightened of sleep because of the horrifying looking doll. The files even state that there were a few deaths caused by it. The Shadow Doll was later found in an antique shop and oddly enough, a couple purchased it. After the purchase, the couple began to encounter the eeriest of nightmares. They later found out that they were experiencing the same nightmares of the cursed doll and that the husband had scratches all over his back and neck which could only be traced back to the Shadow Doll. How could you ever go to sleep with this thing in your house? Like, falling asleep is basically a death sentence if you've ever interacted with this doll in person. What I want to know is where this thing came from. Like, we know that it was made using black magic, but by who? Was it some sort of witch that created this? A satanic cult? Was it the devil himself or a demon of sorts? Who made this doll and what is its purpose? If we could figure that out, then we might have a better chance at not only understanding this specific doll, but maybe others that are like it. Sadly, I don't think that the Shadow Doll is going to be letting us in on its secrets anytime soon. And finally, number 1 on this list is Letta. As far as looks go, this thing is definitely number 1 on any list of creepy looking things. The Travel Channel says, short for Letta Me Out, Letta is a 200-year-old wooden doll with human hair. He was discovered beneath a house in Wagga Wagga, Australia by his current caretaker, Kerry Walton. Walton told the Warwick Daily News, I reckon he walks in the nighttime. We came in here as a new house and I've never heard so many strange things in my life. He's found scuff marks on the floor of his home as well as objects mysteriously shifted. Walton has brought Letta with him to multiple television interviews and has started an Instagram page dedicated to the doll. Kerry, my guy, what are we doing here, man? Apparently he has said that multiple people have seen this doll move before and it just walks around the house like it owns the damn place. I took a look at the Instagram page that this guy has for his doll and it's just so creepy. Like, the way that this thing looks, I can't possibly imagine having it in my own home. Some people have rumored that Kerry is actually under the control of this doll and that he's brainwashed. A lot of people can't wrap their heads around the fact that someone in their right mind would want to keep and promote something like this, so that's why it's possible he's actually being told to do it by the doll itself. The only people who know for sure though would be Kerry and Letta, I guess.
Number 5, Baby Doll from Hell. Alrighty folks, well today might not be another installment of dolls from my personal collection. That was not right. Alrighty folks, well today might not be another installment of dolls just from my personal collection. This one is a doll that I blocked out of my memory last time I was chatting about my girls. And my dad can't currently find her, never mind the fact that I can't even find what type of baby doll she was on the internet. Picture this, a white baby doll with white blonde hair, wearing a yellow patterned dress, and she has like a band-aid on her hand and she's got some hearts on her body. Like there's one on her skull, I think there's one on her cheek, some more on the band-aid. Oh, and she talks. Battery powered, of course. So if you know what this is, please let me know in the comments because I can't find any creator for it. So the band-aids and like the little hearts act as sensors, repeating, "I love you, mommy." Cute, right? Yeah. So while this was, a cute toy when I was little, it kind of got cast to the wayside as I was growing up, since I grew out of playing with my baby doll style dolls and played more with my Barbies, my Mycenes, Bratz, Polly Pockets, so forth and so on. My marbles. I still have the large trunk of all my Barbies in their shoebox with their accessories in my living room currently, for crying out loud. And that's without mentioning that one of my couches is currently full of my stuffed animals, and I just got another one yesterday. When I was in high school though, I think my mom moved the baby doll from my playroom into my bedroom into an attempt to decorate in her style or something similar. She lived in one of the cubbies above my bed, next to my stuffed, farm Barney plush and my stuffed lion, and also next to the cubby with whatever books I was reading at the time. Look, my childhood bedroom looks like a library, and that's to say the least. Well, as luck would have it, one day I was picking her up to dust around her and she started making noise. "I love you, mommy. I love you, mommy." So I had previously unearthed my Diva Stars doll from her toy graveyard, and being similarly battery operated, knew that if this doll had batteries left over in her, they should have been corroded and non-functional by that point in time. So I flipped the doll over, pried open her Velcro backing, fished out the battery pack, only to discover that she didn't have any batteries in her. At all. Zilch. Zero. Nothing. So hey, at first I was like, maybe I just imagined it. I was a sleep deprived teen after all, and that was during the time I was bouncing off and on Concerta, which don't do that. ADHD's a fun time. I shook my head and kept on with my mundane chores until she said it again. "I love you, mommy." Now, by the way, her voice box was still as crystal clear as it had been when I was in my youth, which also confused the heck out of me. So I grabbed her and I brought her to my dad, but her sensors obviously didn't activate in front of him. So he chalked it up to my overactive imagination, and I think I either buried her in my closet or back in the graveyard that was the downstairs playroom. Yes, I was totally scared of going there when I was little. So earlier today, I was trying to find a photo of her, and I was even FaceTiming my dad to try and find her somewhere in my childhood home, and I came out with nothing. Which leads me to the conclusion that she's waiting somewhere in the ether, just plotting a revenge, or I don't want to think about otherwise. If she shows up at my place later, check my Instagram, you'll know. Number 4, Annabelle. So Donna and Angie were student nurses and good friends who had decided to room together while in school, and for Donna's 28th birthday, her mom had gifted her a very large Raggedy Ann doll, something she was thrilled about. Hey, personally, I'd be the same way. I'd be like, yes, gimme. Let the record show, Christmas is coming. I am always down to accept more dolls, plushies. Can't go wrong. So soon after adopting the precious doll, Donna started to notice some weird behavior. She would leave Annabelle on her bed every morning behind her locked bedroom door, seeing her the same way with her arms and legs crossed, and would come home at night to the rag doll having moved rooms and in positions that just weren't possible. She's described a few instances of the doll kneeling, and speaking from experience, stuffed dolls can't kneel without falling for more than a few seconds. Now Donna and Angie then started finding notes left throughout the apartment, written on parchment paper in red pen. 2 things they didn't own. When Donna's boyfriend Lou started criticizing the doll, unexplainable handprints and scratches began appearing on his body. And that's when the girls made the decision to call a priest, who then brought in the Warren. Oh, and before that they also brought in a medium who did a seance. That's how we got the name Annabelle. So the Warrens were able to calm down the entity enough to remove her from the house, place her in the backseat of their vehicle, and Ed decided it was safer to avoid traveling on the interstate in case the entity hadn't really been separated from the doll. And what do you know? Ed Warren was correct. In no time at all, Ed and Lorraine felt themselves the object of a vicious hatred. At every single curve in the road, their new car, by the way, began to stall, causing the power steering and brakes to fail. Repeatedly, this car was verging on collision. The 3rd time the car stalled along the road, Ed reached into his black bag, took out a vial of holy water, and threw it onto the rag doll, making the sign of the cross over it. Thankfully, the disturbance in the car stopped immediately, allowing the Warrens to get home safely. Now, for the next few days afterwards, Ed sat the doll in a chair next to his desk, and the doll levitated a number of times in the beginning, but would seem to just sort of fall inert. During the following weeks, however, it began showing up in various rooms of the house. When the Warrens were away and had the doll locked up in the outer office building, they would often return to find it sitting comfortably upstairs in Ed's easy chair when they opened the main front door. It also became apparent that Annabelle hated priests and assorted clergymen. During the follow-up process on the case, it was necessary for the Warrens to consult the priests associated with the incident in the young, nurse's apartment. Now, Returning home alone one evening, Lorraine was terrified by loud, rolling growls that reverberated throughout the house. And later throughout the night, when she was listening to the playback on the telephone answering machine, there were back-to-back calls from now a Father Hegan. Now between his two calls was the incredible growling noises that she'd heard earlier in the house. On a different day, Father Jason Bradford, a Catholic exorcist, had been working with Ed and asked about, the new addition to the office. Annabelle. Now Ed told Father Jason about the case and gave him the paperwork for his review, and after hearing Ed's account of what had happened, the priest picked up the rag doll and said, you're just a rag doll, Annabelle. You can't hurt anything. Yeah, you know where this is going, I know where it's going. The priest then tossed the stuffed figure back onto the chair, and Ed was like, hey, that's one thing you better not say, ever again. So when Father Jason stopped to say goodbye to Lorraine, she pleaded that he was, be careful when you're driving, and please call her when you get home, just to be safe. Well, what do you know? A few hours later, the telephone rings. Father Jason's like, hey Lorraine, why did you tell me to be careful driving? And she's like, well, your car's gonna go out of control and you're gonna have an accident. He's like, well, you were right. The brake system failed and I was almost killed in a traffic accident. My car's a wreck. Oh, this isn't the only instance of, Annabelle having her time. I know one instance where a young man and his girlfriend were visiting the Warrens Museum and he threatened Annabelle by saying, hey Annabelle, do your worst. Well, when he and his girlfriend left that day on his motorbike, they wound up in an accident. The young man sadly didn't survive, and his girlfriend was left in critical condition. I repeat, respect dolls, especially those with spirits attached. Please. Number 3, Licca Chan. So the Licca Chan doll, a popular counterpart to the, ever so famous Barbie, was so beloved in Japan that the manufacturer set up a phone line for eager young folks to call and chat with the doll herself. Or, well, they thought they were. Rumors began circulating that some little ones reported hearing unsettling messages from Licca Chan, such as, I'm coming to your house to kill you. Stuff of nightmares. So, how about we just talk about some of the urban legends surrounding this doll that I think are pretty true. So imagine a young girl who might be like a little too old to play with dolls, so like let's say 12, who decides to discard her cherished Licca Chan. She throws it in the trash, family relocates to a new city, as you do. Well, doll didn't leave her alone. One day when returning home from school, the girl answered a phone call from an eerie voice claiming to be Licca Chan, who ominously stated, I'm on the rubbish dump. I was abandoned but I'm coming home. The girl originally dismissed it as a prank, but she got a little nervous when she got more phone calls. Now the final phone call chilled her to the core when the voice claimed, I'm outside your house. Open the door. So she peered out the window, didn't really see anything. Whew, big sigh of relief, and then she heard, I'm right behind you. And that's where that one ended, because yikes, I don't want to know what happened next. But there's more to this cursed doll than you might believe. So the company manufacturing the doll actually made an error during production, so we got a batch of 3-legged dolls, which hey, I'm all for. So even though they were called most of them, some did slip through the cracks and ended up with the public. One particular unsettling story involved a woman finding a 3-legged Licca Chan doll in a public restroom. To her horror, the doll's deformed purple third leg moved, and its tiny mouth whispered, my name is Licca Chan and I'm cursed. I'm cursed. Cursed. The haunting voice tormented her relentlessly, leading to a nightmarish descent into madness. Now, other variations of the legend featured the 3-legged Licca Chan doll playing gruesome games of hide and seek, impaling unsuspecting victims, or even growing a cursed leg on anyone who dared to flush it down the toilet. So yeah, don't throw out your old dolls. Please, they're gonna come back and haunt you.